2016년 4월 4일 오전 10시경 미국 텍사스 오스틴 대학교 올해 19세 대학교 1학년생인 하루카 와이저는 지금까지 한 번도 빠지지 않던 수업에 나타나지 않는다. 그녀의 룸메이트였던 실비아는 어젯밤 9시 30분경 하루카가 자신의 키를 잃어버린 것 같다며 전화해 기숙사에 있냐고 물어보는 전화통화를 끝으로 그녀를 보지 못했는데 이날 수업도 빠진 하루카가 혹시 무슨 일이 일어난 것은 아닌지 매우 걱정되기 시작한다. 참고로 하루카가 잃어버린 키에는 후추 스프레이가 달려있었다. 1시간 후인 오전 11시 2분 결국 실비아는 자신의 룸메이트인 하루카가 걱정돼 UT 캠퍼스 경찰에 그녀를 실종자로 신고한다. 다음날 4월 5일 아침 9시 45분 텍사스 대학교 풋볼 스타디움 옆쪽에 위치하고 있는 졸업생 센터 건물 앞 월러 크릭에서 낙엽에 덮여있는 항구의 시신이 발견된다. 그 시신은 개울가의 바위들 중간 폭에 나치 상태로 엎드려 있었고 두개골에 심한 타격을 입은 상처와 피가 고여 있었다. 그리고 성폭행의 흔적이 다분해 보였고 그 사체 주변에는 그녀의 브라, 속옷, 양말, 범행 도구로 쓰여진 것 같은 망치 한 자루 그리고 누군가의 안경이 놓여 있었다. 마지막으로 그녀의 목에는 신발끈으로 목이 졸려있는 상태였다. 며칠 후 그녀의 검시 결과 그녀의 얼굴 부분의 손상이 특히 심한 것을 알 수 있었는데 코는 부러져 있었고 눈과 입 주변은 찢어져 있는 상처들이 많았으며 두개골에는 크게 두 군데의 금이가 있었다. 하지만 가장 최종적으로 그녀의 사인에 크게 기인한 것은 신발끈으로 그녀의 목을 조른 것이 가장 치명적이었다. 그리고 범인은 그녀를 살해 후 사체를 들어 원래 살해했던 장소에서 조금 떨어진 개울가로 이동해 유기한 것으로 보였다. 하지만 이 모든 여러 증거에도 불구하고 모든 물품에서 경찰은 DNA 감식 불가라는 결과를 얻게 되는데 그날 습하고 물이 많이 오고 갔던 개울가에 사체와 그녀의 물품들이 약 48시간 동안 유기된 점들이 DNA 감식에 어려움을 초래한 것으로 보인다. 2일 후인 2016년 4월 7일 오후 2시 텍사스 오스틴 경찰은 하루카 살해사건의 중요한 용의자로 추정되는 하나의 CCTV 영상을 공개하고 대중에게 그의 신상에 대한 도움을 요청한다. 그리고 그 다음 날인 4월 8일 경찰은 17세 노숙인이었던 미카엘 크라이너를 하루카 와이저 1급 살인 혐의로 기소하고 체포한다. 미카엘은 집이 없어 떠돌던 도중 텍사스 학교 근처에 있던 버려진 창고에서 지냈는데 추운 밤에 여러 물건을 드럼통에 넣고 불을 피우다 근처 소방관들에게 발각돼 노숙인 쉼터로 옮겨지게 되었고 그 쉼터에서 텍사스 경찰들을 만나게 된다. 경찰들은 그가 쉼터로 끌고 왔던 핑크색과 빨간색이 섞인 색깔의 자전거를 유심히 보게 되었고 그 자전거가 마침 하루 전 오스틴 경찰이 대중에게 공개한 CCTV에서 발견된 용의자가 끌고 다닌 자전거와 매우 유사해 보였다. 미카엘을 신문한 경찰들은 그에게 하루카 와이저의 살해에 어떤 관련이 있는지 물었지만 그의 대답은 단 하나 No, 아니요 한 글자였다. 그리고 그가 끌고 다녔던 자전거는 자신이 이곳저곳 떠돌다가 발견해 갖고 다닌 것뿐 그녀의 살해에 대해서는 전혀 알 수 없다 말한다. 그리고 재판 과정 중에 미카엘 변호인의 주장.
We asked him. He came into evidence. He had a history of sexual assaults and bike theft, women's bike theft. That's why they were looking at him. This was the basis of the case that they were building, and they started with him because he looks like the suspect. He wears glasses, and he has a history of being on the UT campus. Him. Right there. It's in evidence. 5'10", 175 pounds, African American, short haircut, glasses. Because that's that kid over there. Look at his chest. Look at his arms. This is the guy that picked up 125 pounds of dead weight and carried it 10 feet and dropped it into a crack? That hard? No way.
과연 올해 19세 대학교 1학년생인 하루카 와이저를 학교 근처 개울가에서 잔인하게 살해하고 성폭행한 살인범은 바로 17세 노숙인 미카엘 크라이너인 것인가 아니면 그는 억울하게 누명을 받은 무고한 어린 노숙인일 뿐인 걸까? 이 사건의 신뢰성을 위해 미국 언론사 CBS 오스틴의 여러 기사들과 오스틴 아메리카 스테이츠먼 신문사의 라이언 오툴로 기자의 저널을 참고했습니다. 그리고 약 3시간가량의 미카엘 크라이너의 형사재판 두 번째 날의 영상을 입수해 처음부터 끝까지 시청하고 분석하였습니다. 이 사건은 매우 간단한 사건입니다. 한 여대생이 잔인하게 성폭행 살해당했고 이틀 후 바로 용의자가 검거되었죠. 하지만 이 단순하고 간단하게 끝날 줄 알았던 사건은 용의자 변호인의 이성적이고 날카로운 변론에 전세가 뒤집혀지기도 합니다. 하지만 또 이 사건을 담당한 검사의 주장 역시 매우 영화적이고 사람들의 감정을 울리는 부분이 있어 결론적으로 이 사건을 판결한 배심원들의 판결은 만장일치되지 못합니다. 저는 이제 이 사건의 등장인물들에 대한 짧은 소개만을 해드린 후 재판 중 매우 인상 깊었던 변호인 부분과 검사 부분의 영상들을 더 중점적으로 보여드리려 합니다. 이 두 개의 주장들을 차분히 들어보시고 어느 쪽의 말이 더 신뢰가 가시는지 한번 직접 판단해 보시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 그리고 이 사건의 모든 결론이 드러나는 후반부 영상까지 끝까지 시청 부탁드리겠습니다. 마지막으로 지난 영상에서 소중한 후원해주신 구독자분들 너무나 감사드립니다. 이번 한 주도 열심히 제작해보겠습니다. 감사합니다. 1997년 6월 22일 포틀랜드 오레곤주에서 태어난 하루카 와이저는 사건 당시 19세로 체중 약 54kg, 키 160cm의 아름다운 대학생이었다. 그녀는 일본계 미국인 혼혈로서 의사였던 아버지 토마스 와이저와 가정주부였던 엄마 야수오 츠나미, 남동생 나부로와 막내 여동생 나오미와 함께 화목한 가정의 장녀였다. 하루카의 친구들과 가족들은 그녀를 회상할 때 그녀는 항상 아름다운 미소를 갖고 그녀의 주변 사람들을 기분 좋게 따뜻하게 만드는 러블리한 사람이라 회상한다. 그녀는 매번 타인을 배려하고 가족들의 의견을 항상 존중했던 사람으로 아버지 닥터 토마스 와이저의 가장 큰 자랑이기도 했다. 그리고 하루카는 어릴 적 초등학교와 중학교 재학 당시 과학, 수학 부분에서 영재 소리를 들으며 전미 상위 10%의 성적을 거둘 정도로 학업적으로 매우 뛰어난 학생이었다. 하지만 중학생 때 엄마가 권유했던 발레 학원을 다니면서 자신이 지금까지 느껴보지 못했던 뜨거운 열정을 느끼게 되고 현대무용과 댄스에 심취하게 된다. 그리고 고3 때 플로리다에서 개최했던 어느 한 현대무용 대회에서 2등을 차지하며 어느 한 심사위원의 눈에 띄게 되어 텍사스 대학교 연극예술학과 장학생으로 입학 권유를 받게 된다. 그리하여 다음해 2015년 텍사스 오스틴에 위치한 텍사스 대학교에 장학생으로 입학하게 되고 그녀는 연극예술학과와 자신의 또 다른 꿈인 의사가 되기 위해 프리메디컬 코스의 수업도 같이 병행하며 듣게 된다. 그리고 2016년 4월 3일 오후 9시 30분 그녀는 다음 주에 있을 무용 리사이틀 공연을 앞두고 밤 수업을 끝내고 자신이 지냈던 프레더 홀 기숙사를 향해 걸어간다. 하지만 불행하게도 그녀는 개울가 앞에 꺾이는 골목 끝까지 누군가가 뒤따라오고 있다는 사실을 알아채지 못했다. 사건 당시 17세였던 2000년 텍사스 텍사카나에서 태어난 미카엘 크라이너는 젊은 미혼모인 엄마의 손에서 자라는데 그의 엄마는 미카엘이 태어나기 전부터 이미 알코올과 마약 중독에 빠져 있었던 사람이었고 그 중독의 여파로 미카엘은 엄마의 뱃속에 태아로 있었을 때부터 일명 태아 알코올 증후군을 갖고 태어난다. 이 신드롬의 영향으로 그의 뇌는 어릴 적부터 올바른 발달 과정을 겪지 못했고 지능이 또래 애들보다 떨어지고 우울증과 조울증 그리고 여러 정신적 장애를 갖고 태어난다. 이런 미카엘 엄마의 정상적이지 못한 상태로 법원은 그녀가 어린 미카엘에게 제대로 된 양육을 할 수 없을 거라 판단. 미카엘은 그의 할머니 메리의 집과 위탁보호소를 오고 가며 자라게 된다. 하지만 할머니 메리의 집에서 미카엘은 심각할 정도의 아동학대를 당하게 되는데 일례로 미카엘이 10살이 되던 해 어느 한 이웃이 미카엘이 속옷만 입은 채 할머니 메리의 집 마당 앞에서 서성거리는 것을 보게 되었고 그에게 어찌된 영문인지 물었더니 할머니가 자신을 혼내며 집을 당장 나가라며 집 밖으로 내쫓은 것이라 말한다. 더불어 그 10살짜리 아이의 두 눈은 파랗고 빨갛게 멍들고 심하게 부어 있었으며 이 두 눈의 멍은 모두 할머니 메리가 그에게 엄청 심한 체벌을 가해 만들어진 것으로 확인되었다. 이 모습을 본 이웃은 즉시 경찰에 신고했고 할머니인 메리는 그 자리에서 체포되어 경찰서에 구금된다. 하지만 2,000불의 보석금만을 내고 바로 풀려나 할머니 메리는 다시 미카엘을 정서적, 신체적 학대를 하게 되며 이를 못 참고 미카엘은 할머니 집보다는 휴스턴에 있던 위탁가정 보호소에서 더 오래 지냈던 것으로 확인된다. 하지만 추후에 미카엘이 고등학교 2학년 무렵에는 자신을 키워준 할머니 메리는 너무나 자상하고 멋진 할머니였다며 자신이 다니던 고등학교 신문과 인터뷰를 하기도 한다. 참고로 미카엘 그가 할머니 집과 위탁보호소를 오고 가는 중간에 정신적으로 많은 문제를 겪었음을 발견하게 되는데, 그는 경증 정도의 우울증이 동반되는 자폐가 있었고 동시에 정신분열증까지 겪고 있었다는 사실이 확인된다. 그렇기에 종종 할머니 메리의 집 근처에 살던 이웃들은 미카엘이 안 보이는 누군가와 자꾸 싸우며 허공에 주먹질을 한다는 언급을 하기도 한다. 하지만 미카엘의 친여동생은 오빠였던 미카엘이 매번 이상했던 것은 아니고 대부분 자신에게 엄청 잘해주고 스윗한 오빠였다며 회상하고, 어느 한 고등학교 신문에 미카엘이 나와 긍정적인 인터뷰를 한 기사도 나오기도 했다며 그를 옹호하기도 한다. 참고로 지금까지 언급한 미카엘의 정신적 문제는 추후 하루카 사건의 담당 검사의 주장과는 매우 상반된다는 것을 알 수 있다. 그리고 이 무렵쯤에 미카엘은 사춘기를 겪으며 자신의 얼굴과 외모에 집착하기 시작했으며 태어나 처음 사귄 여자친구에게 때로는 폭력적으로 대할 때도 생기고 가끔 자신의 비밀스러운 생각과 잡념들을 일기에 남겨놓기도 한다. 추후 이 사실들은 하루카 사건 검사에 의해 다시 한번 밝혀진다. 그리고 미카엘이 고등학교를 더 이상 다니지 않을 무렵에 그의 할머니인 메리는 도저히 정신적으로 문제가 생긴 미카엘을 돌보는 것이 부담스러워져 그에게 집을 나가 홀로 삶을 꾸려나가라며 손주인 미카엘에게 독립하라고 강권한다. 이 점 때문에 그를 때때로 케어해주고 있었던 위탁가정보호소는 그에게 계속해서 지낼 수 있는 곳을 제공하게 된다. 하지만 미카엘은 스스로 어느 순간에 자의로 그 위탁보호소를 나와 그 길로 홈리스가 되어버린다. 그는 홈리스로 여러 곳을 배회하며 살다 누군가의 차를 얻어 타고 텍사카나에 있던 할머니 집에서 약 600km나 떨어져 있었던 텍사스 오스틴 대학 근처까지 와버리게 되고, 계속해서 홈리스를 위한 쉘터를 찾아다니거나 빈 굴다리 안이나 아무도 신경 쓰지 않았던 텍사스 대학 창고 건물 안에서 쪽잠을 청하거나 몰래 거주하는 방식으로 살아다닌다. 그리고 마침내 2016년 4월 8일 소방관의 권유로 오게 된 노숙자 쉼터에서 한 경찰관에게 1급 살인 혐의로 현장에서 체포된다. 미카엘 그는 이 상황이 도저히 납득이 되지 않는다. 2018년 7월 10일 텍사스 주립재판장 미카엘 크라이너 변호인 아리엘 파이안 변호사의 변론. 첫 번째로 변호인 아리엘은 미카엘 그가 그날 만약 범죄를 저질렀다면 얼마나 말도 안 되는 상황 속에서 이런 범죄를 저질렀을지, 시간적으로나 물리적으로 그가 이런 범죄를 일으켰을 확률은 매우 희박하다는 주장으로 변론을 시작한다.
This is a circumstantial evidence case. Okay? That we've been telling you that from the very beginning. It hasn't changed. All of this evidence is circumstantial. Each of you must decide for yourself what reasonable doubt is. I will propose this to you, and you can take it or leave it as you choose. But a reasonable doubt is anything that causes you to hesitate in the most important of your own affairs. Something that if you're looking at the evidence and you go, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. And then you ask yourself, why doesn't it make sense? Well, this is why. That's a reasonable doubt. Starting with that, look at the evidence. Let's talk about Officer Rodriguez, UTPD. He's following up on a missing persons report. He went into the Waller Creek area. It's a natural area. It's wild. It's overgrown. There's very little light in the evening. It's down below ground level, and there are large buildings on either side. So it gets dark down there fast, and it's rough and rocky ground. And there's water in there. The campus is an open traffic area. Okay, people can walk in and out through campus. We talked a little bit about the homeless population in there. They can wander through campus. There's no stopping entrance into the area. And he found the body. And he told you it was very hard to find. Okay? Now, you have to think about Waller Creek. You have to think about this area. And you have a lot of evidence that lets you look at the area. We'll talk about that in a second. That survey mapping equipment, the phono, okay, it takes forever to load. It's very bulky and awkward to maneuver through. But I encourage you to do that because there are night shots in that phono. 2 days after the crime, that device puts you in the creek at the same time. so you can see how dark it is down there. Now, when you're looking at it, you'll see bright splashes of light and then darkness. Bright splashes of light are obviously flashlights. Okay? There's been no evidence of a flashlight. So look at the darkness. You can spiral 360 degrees with that thing. Do it. Look at where the lights are. You can see the lights up on the walkway. And most importantly, you can see the cover, the vegetation blocking those lights. It was really dark down there. And that's really, really important. It gives you distances, that's helpful, but essentially, you need to know how far it is from the path to the rocks, and how far it is from the rocks to where the hammer, the eyeglasses, and the bra were found. So let's walk through the crime scene. So here we are at the top of the staircase going down to the walkway into the Waller Creek area. This is the pedestrian bridge here. This is the CLA building back here in the back. You have to come down these steps to get to this part of the path. Once you enter this part of the path, you walk around the landscaping down to where the stone wall is. And here's where the stone wall turns towards into Waller Creek. You got to walk down this path, and then you got to make this turn. Now look over here. Over here to the right, you can see the beginning of the drop-off. All the way down through here, there's a drop-off, but not through here. Once you get to the curve, going down the walkway, the back of the Alumni Center, this is the easiest access point into the creek. Why is that important? Because the killer would want to go this way. It's much easier than jumping off the side. Yes, you can jump off the side, but think about that for a second. How hard would that be, either forcing Haruka off the ledge or carrying her body off the ledge? No, this is where you're going to go. Why is that important to your determination? Because from here to there is a long way. This is not close. You can't even see the rocks where the body is found from here. You have to go all the way down the pathway before you do. You got to walk down past the wall, all the way to the curve, before you can see the rocks. This at 35 or 40 yards. Check the faro, check the distances. Please, make sure. Look at the drop-off here. This is the closest point to the rocks, but you wouldn't walk this way carrying a body or forcing someone to travel this way, because they're going to fall, they're going to take you down with them when they fall. You wouldn't choose this path. You would go back and choose this one. And this is what the ground is like right through here. Look at the rocks. Think about that for a second. And the testimony that you've heard from both sides on this, you're talking fist-sized rocks that you're walking on top of. At night, in the dark. And if we're talking about this guy over here, someone who is new to Austin. How long have you lived in Austin? How many have you been down in there? Think about that for a second. You have to have already been here and been in here to know the environment, to know the conditions, to know how difficult it would be to maneuver through this area. These rocks are going to make you fall. They're good. It's difficult terrain. So what did Detective Tynes also tell us? He told us about the blood trail. I'm sorry, the apparent blood trail. Why is it only an apparent blood trail? Because they didn't test it. They told us about the blood on the boulder number 11. He told us there was no blood. No one presented any evidence of blood on boulder 12. Okay? Those two big boulders there. And the body was found behind boulder 12. The victim's blood was not found anywhere else in this area. The blood trail and on the rock. That's it. Why is this important? So that entryway, the easiest access point down into this area, is behind the photographer at this point. It's back here. You got to walk down that broken part of the east or the west embankment. I'm sorry, east embankment, and then walk south. And then here you see that blood trail. We didn't find any blood over here. It wasn't until here that we find this apparent blood. Now, why is that important? Because this blood is a consistent line to where the body was found over here, but also to where the blood was found here at tent number 9 and then up here on the rock on rock 11. So we talked to Detective Tynes about what this tells us. And he agreed that it was consistent with Haruka bleeding, blood dropping here, and then being taken up to here. Look at the pharaoh. Look at how dark it is. You can't see the rock except through the flashlight. Look at the pharaoh. Whoever did this knew this was here. Knew these rocks were here. He led her right to where he wanted her because he knew it was there. Here's boulder 11, here's boulder 12. Look at the distance between the two. Her 5 foot tall, long body is hidden completely behind this boulder. This boulder is longer than 5 feet. The distance between these two, again, check me, please. Look at the pharaoh. It'll tell you the distances. Measure the distance. The distance between these points is over 10 feet. Why is that important? Because we have an extremely large amount of blood on boulder 11. There it is when it's been sprayed with LCB so you can see the pattern. And here is where the body was found. Between these two boulders, under these sticks. This is a very small space. Detective Nelson told you it was less than 2 feet. Detective Tynes told you it was a very cramped, confined area. This is a small space. So what does it tell us? What does this information tell us? She was attacked on the path. If you look carefully from the CLA video, you can actually see the suspect running down. You can see his shadow along the wall running down. All the way down to where the path turns. You can see that in the upper right-hand corner if you look at it close enough. It's there. She was rendered unable to resist almost immediately. We don't know how. But we know she was bleeding by the time she got to that tent marker 5 at least. Most likely she was hit and either rendered unconscious or forced to submit at that point. Ms. Weiser was a very fit young lady. She was strong. She would certainly have not gone willingly. She would have fought had she been able to. I believe that she was rendered either unconscious or stunned at this point, and that she was dragged from there, either carried or dragged down into the creek and then to the location of her death. And I think that's why you see the blood on the ground where you see it. She was most likely carried past that point. We know that also because the blood's not smeared on the ground. and she was placed face down on the rock. Tent 5, that first blood spot, it's smaller than all the rest of them, and it's not smeared. Tent 6, just slightly larger. Again, not smeared. Tent 7, even larger amount of blood. You can tell the rock has little cavities here, and then it's pooling inside these little cavities. Again, not smeared. Tent 9, right below, just to the east of Boulder 11, even larger amounts of blood. Again, not smeared. Because the suspect wasn't dragging her. He was carrying her. She doesn't have any blood on her clothes. I guarantee you, if there was blood on her clothes, you would have heard it. We would have spent a quarter of a day doing just that. So that tells us her clothes were removed prior to the major injuries to her head. Because head wounds are very vascular. Dr. Crowns told us. Head wounds bleed a lot. No blood on her clothes. She's face down on that boulder. How do we know that? Location of the injuries. Here, here. The injuries to her head are consistent with a jagged instrument causing those injuries. They're not cuts. They're very clear about that. So when she said maybe it was a blade, you know that's not true. Because if it was a blade, it'd be a cut. And we would have heard testimony about that. Dr. Crowns would have told us that. It was jagged. It was the rock. And I asked him, is it consistent with the rock? And he said yes. The fracture on the left side of her head lines up with that jagged cut, that jagged tear to her temple area. Asked him that too. Again, consistent with a rock. And then the ligature. Described it as self-tightening. Once it was tightened, unless someone pulled it off, it was going to kill her. And that's the thing. She would have pulled that off if she could have. I mean, that just makes sense, right? I mean, that's perfectly reasonable. I mean, I'm constantly pulling at my collar because it's too tight. Guaranteed, if she could have pulled that away, she would have. But she couldn't because of her other injuries. So we know the head wounds came before that. Now, the doctor talked about bruising, and we'll get to that in a minute. The other thing you need to be aware of is that suspect carried her from Boulder 11, where she died, behind Boulder 12, and dropped her in. He carried her from here to there. Look at the ground cover. This is State's Exhibit 47. This is all moss and algae from this water course coming through. Moss and algae all underneath the boulder, and even where she was killed here under Boulder 11, all the water coming down and through. This is a treacherous area if you're not aware of it. This is an area very easy to slip. Look at the angle of the slope. Look at the slope. Very easy to slip and fall. And here's your distance. He's not carrying across one boulder, he's carrying across two, and then around and behind. And into this small space here. Across all this. Again, how does he know it's there? How does he know in the pitch dark that this is there? You can't see it. Because this lip face is higher than this. When you're on this side, on the downslope side, looking across, you can't see it. You have to know it's there to take her there. Detective Tynes also told there was a lot of debris in that area. I think he even said there was a mattress. There were multiple items that were not collected or tested. And there were other items that were collected and not tested. There was a bunch of clothing articles found in the ravine. And this is important because this is where they want you to start leaping to conclusions, taking that extra step. They have to prove the distance. Remember that. They got to prove each step of the way. There was underwear found near the body. 1013. It was never presented to you. It's not in any of these bags. You won't find that underwear here. There was a shirt on the ground in the middle of the stream area. Again, it's not in these bags. It's not here. There were socks on the east embankment. Not here. There's a shirt on the east embankment. Again, not here. This is the boulder next to boulder 11. There's that first pair of underwear right there. Closest article of clothing that is not directly related to her, to the body. There's the shirt. Now, their theory is the suspect killed her, covered her up, and then started walking south down the ravine. And then crossed over to the east embankment underneath the Alumni Center, or next to the Alumni Center, but there's an overhang right behind it. Because where he raped and brutally murdered the girl wasn't private enough? I mean, isn't that the whole idea? If you're trying to hide from someone, you're going to commit the crime in a place you feel safe enough to commit the crime? But he decides to go over here for a little extra privacy after he's hidden the body? Does that make sense? So on that east embankment, we find the hammer, we find the bra, we find the socks, we find the glasses, we find the glove. All right here. Hammer, glove, or hammer, bra, socks, glasses over here. Now, didn't collect the glove, didn't think it was important, but it's right in the same area. So we won't know. So why is the bra important? Well, we had Ms. Fagali come up here, Haruka Weiser's roommate. She said she didn't recognize the blue duffel, but they did have another friend of the victim that did. She told us the victim wore glasses. Those were never found. And she did not identify the bra. Think back to the testimony. There was not one witness that got up here and told you that is her bra. Not one. Didn't identify the blood on it. Didn't identify the make and model of the bra. Didn't bring anyone that said, oh yeah, that looks like something she was wearing. And it's different from all of her other bras. At least the ones that we can see. Here's the bra found at the scene. And they showed it to you. Here is State's Exhibit number 17. Her underwear drawer. We see athletic bras, here and here, and we see padded bras in a very neat and orderly fashion here. This doesn't match any of those. And if you look, they're, well, as far as I can tell, and I'm no expert on bras, but there are two kinds of bras in this thing. And neither of them are those. So why is that important? Because if it's her bra, the hammer's important. The glasses are important. If it's her bra. If it's not her bra, they're 35 yards south of the body. There's no usable DNA found at the scene. There were no fingerprints found at the scene. There was no suspect hair found at the scene. There's no proof the bra is the victim's. There's no evidence that she was assaulted with a hammer. Remember what Dr. Crowns told us. The injuries on her head are all consistent with the rock. There's no blood found on Mikael's clothing. No blood. How do you carry someone with that amount of trauma to her head and not get blood somewhere on your body? That's pretty impressive. That's really impressive. Now they want you to believe he's wearing the green shirt at the time he kills her. And he's wearing those blue jeans because those are the only jeans he has. Not a spot of blood on either. The items on the east embankment were found south of the body. South. The bike, which we know the suspect went back and got, is north of the body. Why does he walk further away from his mode of transportation? Why doesn't he walk back north up the ravine? Extremely dark, rough terrain, crossing the creek in the dark. All these things are telling you someone who knows the ravine, knows what's there, has been there before, can get around in there. There are multiple things piled up in that trash can on top of each other. I asked him about transfer and contamination. Transfer. What is transfer? If you touch something, you'll leave something behind or pick something up. Things like moisture, sand, hair. All these things are in this container, stacked up in layers. Once you peel off the first couple top layers, what do you have? This jacket. Why did he take this jacket? He had other jackets. Why did he have this one? Why did he take this one? Because he told us. He found it in that trash bag that morning with all the other stuff. That's why everything was there at that location. All of this stuff was together. States 156. You can see the sandy clothing. All of it sitting here at the bottom of the trash can. The victim's turtleneck. Look at it. Look at the condition. Wet and sandy. No one actually identified who this belongs to, but I'm pretty sure that was hers. Wet and sandy. You can see the sand at the bottom of the trash can. You can see the moisture on the wall of the trash can. It's all right there. Sandy boxers. Now, this is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. Because these boxers, we don't know whose they are. Right? Did you recall the testimony? Did anyone come up here and said, those have his DNA on them? No. Did anyone come up here and say, those have somebody else's DNA on them? No. But they're wet and sandy, so they must belong to the killer. States 208, sandy boxers. Look at the pattern. Defense Exhibit 2. Just a random picture of Haruka Weiser's dorm room. Look in the corner on the bed. What does that look like? Plaid boxers. Guess everybody has a pair. Right there. I don't know whose they were. They don't know whose they were. You don't know whose they were. You have no evidence to base any analysis on that. That computer was being used. Used. A human being was interacting with that machine at the time this happened. It was booting up, it had errors, and it rebooted. He had to turn it off and turn it back on. There's no other way that works. Now, they want you to believe that he just left it on sitting there in his room. Now, you and I might do that, right? Because we plugged it into the wall. Right? You leave your computers plugged in. You leave them on. My computer's on right now. Because it's plugged in to an electrical outlet that is attached to our wonderful City of Austin power grid. That building had no heat, no water, and most importantly, no electricity. So how is this computer just sitting there rebooting? It would die. He told us. He went back to the hospital every day, get coffee, get water, to work on the internet, get stuff off the internet, and to charge his devices. He's not going to leave it open. And even he is leaving it open, how is it restarting? It's all there. In the testimony of Manny Fuentes, in the cross-examination. If you don't believe me, ask for it. Please. This is the job, right here. This is the proof, right here, that that man, that boy over there, did not kill Haruka Weiser. He told us he was living on the streets, hand to mouth, trying to survive, eating 3-day-old yogurt. He's trying to find food, he's trying to find shelter, he's trying to find safety. And he kept scouting around, looking for better places, better opportunities, trying to survive. Place to place to place. Begging for food, begging for money, living hand to mouth. He chose this. He chose this existence. Why? Because he's not very smart. He doesn't think ahead. Now, I'm not saying he's stupid. I'm absolutely not saying that. But he doesn't think ahead. He doesn't plan. He doesn't consider consequences for his actions. Now, they're going to make a big deal about that in a minute, because that sounds really bad when they say it. But here's the point. He chose this over Eartha, and he had no complaints at Eartha. He told us he wanted to be a writer. So now I got to talk about this. Let's talk about the story. It was just gross. Why did they read that to you? Why did they read that to you? What was the point? Think about everything we've done up here as lawyers, all of these boxes, all of this stuff. Everything had a point. everything. Every word out of our mouths, every action that we do, every step that we take, it has a purpose. What was this purpose? How did it make you feel? The story. Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? No. Did it help you decide an issue in this case? Did it prove that Mikhail Kreiner killed Haruka? Did that story help you in some way decide a factual issue in this case? And there's only one factual issue in this case. Did the story identify him as the killer? No. You got a guy charged with capital murder who's childlike. How easy is that? That's a gift. This story was there to do one thing and one thing only. Piss you off. Inflame your passions against men. That's the point. That's why it's there. That's the only reason. Why? Because desire over evidence is the fastest way you can get to a conviction. If you're mad, you will make mistakes. You will leap over fallacies and holes and jump to conclusions because you're mad. Basic human psychology. They found Mick. This is the guy they were following around. We asked him, he came into evidence. He had a history of sexual assaults and bike theft, women's bike theft. That's why they were looking at him. This was the basis of the case that they were building, and they started with him. Because he looks like the suspect. He wears glasses. And he has a history of being on the UT campus. Him. Right there. It's in evidence. 5'10", 175 pounds. African American. Short haircut. Glasses. Cut. Strong. Why does that matter? Because that's that kid over there. Look at his chest. Look at his arms. This is the guy that picked up 125 pounds of dead weight and carried it 10 feet and dropped it into a crack? That arm? No way. No way. I like his odds better. You swore an oath. You swore an oath to review the evidence, to look at the evidence, and to make a decision based on that evidence. They must meet their burden. They must prove every step of the road to get you to beyond a reasonable doubt. Look at each piece of evidence individually. Is it strong? Is it weak? What does it convince me of? Then look at them together. What do these pieces of evidence tell me? How do they link together to create a chain? Is that chain consistent all the way through from beginning to end? Do I have to skip over a link in the chain to go from here to there? Identify those moments. Think about it. Process it. You're logical, reasonable people. That's why you're here. The presumption of evidence is enough to acquit. The judge read that to you. It's in the charge. Mick did not commit this crime. Look at the evidence. and you'll see all those pieces they want you to look at, all that circumstantial evidence coming together. But at the time of the murder, the computer was being used. Ask for that if you don't believe me. Please. Look at the testimony. Remember the testimony that you heard. There were 50 different operations going on, more than 50 operations going on during this time period because the computer was booting, it was failing, and it had to be rebooted. That doesn't happen by itself. Someone has to push the button. That someone was that boy over there. If he's pushing the button, who's killing the girl? He's innocent.
텍사스 트래비스 카운티 검사 길레르모 곤잘레스 검사의 혐의 주장.
That was a lot of stuff. Good job.
첫 번째로 그는 미카엘의 변호인이 주장하는 노트북 사용 시간과 노트북의 기록에 대한 반격으로 시작한다.
That makes sense? If you're living homeless by your own choice in some building that anybody can go into, would you leave your tablet in there? Of course not. And if he was using it before he was seen at UT, couldn't he have just left it on while it's in his backpack? Is that so outrageously crazy? Nobody here said that the backpack turned on the tablet. I think the common sense thing is that he put it in his backpack and it was on. And the operating system is on because that's what's on when your computer's on. It's always doing stuff inside of it. And when you're jostling, which is, I guess, very hard for Mr. Payan to believe is possible, get on a bike, put on a backpack, and take a ride around anywhere you want. And I think you're going to be shocked to find out that things in your backpack are jostling. They're moving up and down. They're banging into each other. And if you happen to have a tablet back there, okay, either apart from its keyboard or with the keyboard, and it's jostling against stuff, it's probably going to start turning on and off the computer. Okay, I mean, sometimes it happens to me with my phone in the pocket. It even calls people sometimes, for Christ's sake. The tablet is a touch screen. So if it's a touch screen, all it has to do is bounce against something. And that's going to take it out of sleep and make the computer start whirling and doing stuff in it. Okay? And then we got all this stuff that we saw that the computer it's not turning on, okay? Don't be confused. That's not what it's saying. It's the operating system that's engaging and re-engaging and whatnot. The biggest issue to me is if any of this was true, that he was using that computer. I went through this with Mr. Fuentes. Where's the data? Where's one thing that he can show you that this person was doing while he was operating his computer? Did he show you one page, one piece of evidence, one thing that said, look, well, at 9:17 he was on the internet. Well, at 9:30 he was on a Word document. Well, over 10 o'clock he was rebooting or something. There's no evidence of that. That doesn't make sense. That's what I was talking to you. They want you to believe that this young man was on his computer doing this every so often. Because that's all the proof there is. Where's the proof of what he was doing on the computer? Where is it? Why didn't he bring it to you? Why didn't he explain that to you? Why are all those numbers that, by the way, he didn't introduce into evidence, why aren't they showing more than every couple of minutes Oh, the operating system is on. Oh, the operating system is on. Oh, the operating system is on. And why was it happening, some of them, like a minute apart? What is he doing? Getting on, punching, leaving. Punching, leaving. What is going on with him? That's what they want you to believe. It's called a rabbit hole. It's an old trick. Don't fall for it. Medical Art Parkway. And we saw a lot of pictures of what was pulled out of that trash. And you saw that a lot of those items were wet and damp and sandy. The one thing that I didn't see a picture of, the one thing that I didn't see the defense yell at you about, the one thing that he didn't stand here and show you was a picture of that orange bandana. Kind of important? Is that kind of important to this case? Because we know, without a doubt, that's his orange bandana. Because we got his selfie with that orange bandana and his glasses on. And we have the actual orange bandana recovered from the trash can. Pull it out. Look at it. Pull his selfie. Compare them. You guys tell me if it's the same orange bandana. Why is that important? Because that bandana just happens to be next to the same jacket that the killer had on. It just happens to be next to the young girl's clothes. Okay? And if you look at the video, the killer's got the orange bandana on. The boxers are Haruka-Weisers. You guys look at that picture, you pull it up. Please, be my guest. That picture those aren't even boxers, I submit to you. You look at it. In any event, they sure aren't the same pattern as the ones that were pulled out of that trash can. And what I mean is that they really do match the ones that Mr. Kreiner had with him at LifeWorks. They're exactly the same. They're the same thing. They're the same size, and they're the same plaid pattern. Okay? And by the way, they were all wet, so I probably couldn't get any DNA off them. And he knows that. Okay? But they're not Haruka-Weisers. Look at it. Okay? You guys saw the video. You remember the pizza girl video? Remember when he was following the girl with the pizza box? And it went from camera to camera to camera? Could you not ID it? Was it not the same guy? Could you not see the patches on the jacket? Could you not see the bandana? Could you not see him walk and then come back going from camera to camera? That's what they were doing. It's not magic. It's not sorcery. They were identifying known things that started from the CLA video where they saw the guy on this bike where you can clearly see the type of bike it is. You can clearly see the guy's jacket, the black two-tone jacket with the white patches, okay, the bandana, and glasses. You guys saw it. It's on video. You can look at it again if you want to. Let's look at the video so we can see what they were. That's what they're looking for. Is that a big deal? Is that some kind of trick or you know, are they trying to get over on you? They're looking for a guy with a jacket that looks like this, that has a bandana like that if we keep playing it, has got a backpack that looks like this, and has got glasses. That's all they're doing. Now, when he's away from the bite, you don't look for a guy with that bite. Does that make sense? pretty simple. I don't know, maybe. The guy in the creek, he had to know that place because it was dark and you know, how would he know where to take her and whatnot? Who was living across from the creek? Who was living across from the creek? Squatting in the UT storage room in the southwest corner of this football stadium, which is across the street from the Alumni Center, which has a creek running behind it. And you heard that he was all over the place, scavenging, getting in places where he didn't belong, getting stuff that didn't belong to him, looking for stuff. Is it not common sense that, oh my gosh, 1 block away there's a creek and I'm going to walk down that way and take a look at it? Who's familiar with that area? Mr. Crime. Nobody said that the young lady was cut with a knife. Okay? What was said is, and I think you can see it on this video, that it's pretty apparent that this fella here, at the right time, pulls something out from behind his back. And it looks to be shiny. And I think a lot of people go, you know, that could have been a blade or a knife. And you know what that's good for? That's good for making people pay attention to you. That's good for making people, you better say, come with me. Or it's not going to be good for you. Follow me across the creek, or walk in front of me, or it's going to get bad for you. That's what that's good for. That's why that was mentioned. Okay? And the big deal here, apparently, is that Mikel Prine, 6-foot Mikel Prine, was strong enough to walk away from Texarkana, Texas, and walk to Houston. Who's strong enough to walk away from Killeen, Texas, and walk to Georgetown. Couldn't possibly have picked up 125 pounds and placed it behind those boulders. Did he not have enough time? Is that what we're talking about? Because I'm pretty sure he was off camera for well over an hour. Okay? It's only a distance of 10 or so many feet. Didn't have to drag her. Could have picked her up. Could have pushed her over the rock. I don't know. But it's kind of silly to say, well, he couldn't have done it. Look at this picture of him. He's got thin arms and whatnot. Really? That's not reasonable doubt. That's his twin brother. I think that what makes more sense, and I agree with him on another matter, is that whole Pharaoh video that we're talking about, that the officers or the cops used to make this video diagram, did show how dark it was out there. Okay? And I think that when you are looking at this, you can see how dark it is. Okay? But as you're looking south, down the creek, there's this beacon of light out there. Okay? There's a beacon of light. If I turn back and look north, it's pitch dark. It's pitch dark. We've already heard about it. And he's shown you how rocky and dangerous and slippery and treacherous it is to go back that way. So maybe I'm there at the boulders, having done my deed, and nicely placed the young lady between the boulders and covered her up. And I'm like, I can go back that way, but it's not fun. Or I can see this is kind of lit over here. And if I walk around this path, it's not so rocky. It's kind of flat. So I'm just going to follow this path over here, kind of leading me towards these lights. And at the appropriate place, I'm just going to walk across that creek and go up the bank. And it's dark, but it's not as dark as going back the way he wants you to say he went. And when I get across that creek and am heading up there, looks like I might have dropped my hammer and my glasses and her bra. And it's so dark that I can't find it out there on the ground. And you know what I need to do? I need to get the heck out of here. So I don't have a lot of time to sit around here in the dark looking for my hammer and my glasses and her bra. Okay? Is it not her bra? I wish I could tell you for sure it was. I do know that a witness came in here and said, look, from what I know, one of her dear girlfriends told you that that was the same style and model of bra that she would wear. And apparently it's even the same size. And it's got red markings on it, but we couldn't get any DNA off of it. Okay? It's pretty coincidental, isn't it? There's a sexually assaulted dead young woman about 30 yards away. And in here I find this bra that her friend tells me is the same kind of type and that she would wear, and it's her same size. And it's got these red markings on it that look like blood. I wish I could tell you it was. But it's not Haruka Weiser's bra. No. Don't make that assumption. That's a silly, dumb assumption. He knows he needs a story because there's a storm of evidence. A storm of evidence that's pointing in his direction. And he needs to come up here and tell you guys something. Because if he doesn't, he's done. So he gets up there and he does the best he can. But the evidence that, again, all links into each other is of such quality that he has to come up with a version of events that is frankly preposterous. You know it. It's preposterous. If you picked up a book and you were reading that and that was the version of events that you were hearing about how the person was not guilty, I bet you'd go, yeah, you know, that wasn't so good. Didn't like it. Probably shouldn't have paid for that. Because frankly, it's preposterous. I don't think that story would even make it out of a idea session at a movie. Would you go see a movie where the guy said, yeah, but this is what happened. I'm staying at the storage room at the University of Texas. I got a lot of stuff in there. And among the stuff that I got is a black hammer, metal hammer, rubber grips with designs on it. And oh yeah, it's missing a prong. And it's right next to it. In fact, leaning against this wooden mallet. And it's covering this metal tool with an eyelet on it. And coincidentally, I also have this unique backpack that has this half-moon shape at the zippers. Got this little square patch up here at the top that I was talking to you guys about earlier. And it's got yellow trim about it. Talk about that again a little more. So, I get kicked out, and I take a bunch of the stuff out of here with me to another place. And of all the stuff that I left, I just happened to have left this black hammer. And I left my backpack. So, a few days later, in an area that I should be well familiar with because I was squatting there, you know, probably 100 yards from this place here, somebody's brutally murdered and assaulted Okay? Brutally murdered. And what they find next to what is likely her bra is this hammer. Okay? Alright. Guess it could happen. So they start investigating the case. And then they find this surveillance video. And there's a lot of identifiers on this video. Jacket, bandana, bike, male black, happens to be my same size, kind of my same general body appearance. Up, go back, please. And there. See that? Here's the half moon. Right? See that little rectangle that just flashed up there? It's the backpack. Well, let's see if you have a photo. See that? See that rectangular pattern? Is that a unique kind of backpack? Okay, let's play the video some. So apparently the backpack that I left or lost at the storage room then magically appears here on this surveillance video, where this guy has a pretty distinctive bike, and which even the defendant admits must be the bike used by the murderer because he found it at a dumpster with all of the incriminating evidence. So let's just not even bother with that and assume that's the bike, but that's the bike. And the fella's is wearing a jacket, a pretty distinctive jacket. It's two-tone black with shoulder patches. Eventually, in fact, the next day, 8, 9, 10 hours later, Mikhail Kreiner is about a half a mile away at Medical Arts Parkway at an abandoned building. And the firemen show up because he's burning something. And the firemen show up and they turn off the fire and they talk to Mr. Kreiner and go, you know what, he's a nice kid. He's got a speech impediment and he's polite. Let's help him out. So they start working on getting his stuff out of the building and they start looking at a storage unit and whatnot. And they move his bike out. And here's the bike that we see in the video with the killer with the backpack and the jacket and the bandana. I want to talk to you really quickly about condoms. Okay? I asked him about condoms. And he told you, yeah, I had some condoms in Killeen, but I threw them away. I thought that was interesting too. Because I remember talking to a lot of you guys during jury selection about why there wouldn't be DNA evidence in a sexual assault case. And a lot of you guys said, condom. So he really, really thought about that. And he needed to say, well, I didn't have any condoms. Because then Mr. Gonzalez, he's going to say, aha, you used it. He's going to tell the jury he used it, and that's why there's no DNA evidence. UT Sturgeon. Next book, defendant's next book. You know he likes 3-day-old yogurt. We know what that is. Okay? We know what that is because we have evidence that was introduced. That Detective Times went to that storage room a couple days after the murder, and right outside of it, this is found. Okay? And we know it's the same package, got the same name on it. And on the flip side, it says condom. attire, condoms. So he lied to us. Okay? Deception. And he lied to us with a smile on his face and a cheerful nature. And he'd laugh every once in a while because, it's only a capital murder trial and it's high stakes. And I'm on the stand. And, I understand that some people laugh when they're nervous, but was that what was going on? Does that speak more about the personality that's going on in this guy's head? Also, by the way, I forgot to tell you that over here where he's squatting and scavenging stuff, he has a collection of ropes and toe straps, nylon toe straps. Okay. Just has a fascination with my ear. I do have to tell you that when they found the young lady on Waller Creek, she was brutally murdered. We all know that. She had a toe strap tightly cinched around her neck. Same color, same style as the ones that Mr. Kreiner collects. The photo, the selfie of Mr. Kreiner, the glasses, and the orange bandana. The one that he told you he was so proud of because it was sexy me. Sexy me. On trial for brutally raping and murdering a girl. Cross-examination. And let's talk about narcissistic, sexy me. Does that talk to you about his personality? Does that tell you about what's going on in his head? That's the bandana, folks. That's the same bandana worn in the same style that you see on that surveillance video. And then you see in the tub with all the other implements that were taken from the murder scene. It's wet and it's sandy. Just like the jacket, just like a lot of those other clothes. And if you want to think about why there's not more DNA evidence or whatnot, I can speculate wildly. Did he wash her off? Did he get in that creek with that jacket, or did his jacket fall in the creek? Did his bandana fall in the creek in the struggle? Did he use the bandana to wash her off? I don't know. But it sure is coincidental that all of that stuff is wet and sandy. Just like the crime scene. And if you look at her autopsy photos, if you look at the picture with her ring on it, her hands are sandy. Same type of stuff. Back to the rape story. Sorry that we had to start there, but again, what does it show you? I mean, I promise I didn't bring it up here to inflame you, but it shows his fascination with violent sex acts. That's what it clearly shows. His fascination with rape, with brutalizing women, just like what Haruka Weiser. That's why we introduced it. It's sophisticated. Sophisticated writing. I know he's not some great author, but that was a pretty good effort by him. Okay? So maybe again the bar isn't as low as we're being told it is. He even used the term POV in there. He used it. I simply asked him what it was for. What? I got to lower the bar. I don't know what people mean. I have no idea. He wrote it. He doesn't know what it means? I wrote that when I was 12 years old. Manipulation, deceitfulness, and movement of the bar, and I'll explain that to you here in a minute. He hates violence, we heard over and over again, but this is his work product. Okay? Is that someone who hates violence? The injuries on the young lady, multiple, repeated. Just want to talk to you about her face and head. You heard the doctor tell you that she had 3 or 4 good blows, or her head was struck a hard object, the boulder, 3 or 4 times to cause those injuries. Okay? Why is he doing that? What need is there to do that to her? He's got a strap around her neck. If he wanted to kill her, he would have just killed her at that point. Why is he beating her head? What is the point of beating her head before killing her? The end of his story, the last page, maybe the last few sentences. The woman that was being brutalized in his story says, "Stop, stop," or words to that effect. The more she shouted, "Make me want to fuck her even." Okay? He wrote that at either the age of 12 or a lot more recent to that. But again, that's a snapshot of what's going on in his head. This is a sexual sadist. This is a person who equates sex and violence. And it doesn't bother him. He's used to it. He's been living in his head for years. And we are here now with this final product. That's why I introduced that story. I think that the medical examiner's injuries clearly prove to you that the young lady was killed intentionally. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Not that this is even an issue, but I just want to caution, in an abundance of caution, mental health has nothing to do with this. If it did, you would have heard it from the judge in your charge. So please, please, don't do that. Remember, you're supposed to be fair and impartial to both sides. Him and to Haruka Weiser. She doesn't deserve that. And as I'm about to sit down, I do want to stop and say, look, I've been talking about this fella here for a long time. And I just want to talk about young Miss Weiser for a few minutes. She was the victim of a brutal attack. And for people who are involved in the criminal justice system for a long time, I assure you that I don't say that lightly. Okay? You guys got to see a pretty brutal situation. So we know about those physical injuries. But I want you to also think about her, what was going on in her, with her at that time emotionally. Okay? I want you to think about what she was thinking about. Okay? As he's leading her down that creek with a knife, or because he punched her and he's getting her down there. What's going on in her head? And is it, what can I do just to get through this? I'm in a bad situation. I just want to survive. Or is it, God, I hope somebody walks down the path and hears me or sees me, and that maybe I'll get saved. There's always hope. And as it progresses and it gets more violent and angrier and more brutal, and she starts realizing Maybe there is no hope. Maybe I'm not going to make it out of this. And at that moment, what is she thinking about? We know about her physical pain. What's going on in her head? What is she thinking about at that exact moment? She's thinking about her friends. Family. Father. Mother. God. So don't forget that about her. Don't forget about what he put her through. When you read that charge, you remember Harko. When you think of all of this stuff that he told you about, you remember her. That's why we're here. Most of us chose to live in this town. It's not Dallas. It's not Houston. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those places. But one of the reasons we live here, because there's good people here. And they tend to care for each other. And we saw that in this trial. From police officers and firemen who took pity on him because they were doing the right thing. It's time to do the right thing for her. I told you that I was going to come up here and ask you to find him guilty. I'm doing that now. Find him guilty of capital murder. Go in the back. Elect a foreman. If you need to deliberate, please do that. Read the charge. And you're going to find out that you're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty. Godspeed.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Ladies and gentlemen, go back to the entire considering the verdict. We have to tell you that I made one.
지금 두 입장에서 본 내용을 요약하자면 미카엘의 변호인 아리엘의 주장은 어릴 적부터 정신적인 문제가 많고 정신적인 지능이 남들보다 훨씬 뒤처진 미카엘이 이런 계획적이고 치밀한 계획살인을 할 수 있을 리 없고 사건 당일 밤은 엄청나게 어둡고 개울가가 미끄러웠을 텐데 텍사스 오스틴에 온 지 얼마 안 된 17세 노숙자가 이렇게 노련한 범죄를 할 수는 없다 주장한다. 그리고 그가 태우려고 했던 하루카의 물품으로 보였던 옷이나 물건들은 그저 이곳저곳 다니며 노숙을 전전하는 노숙자들에게는 흔한 일로 그저 땅에 떨어져 있었던 물건들을 주워온 것일 뿐. 그리고 무엇보다 그가 평소에 사용했다던 그의 노트북의 기록이 하루카가 살해당한 것으로 추정되는 밤 9시 20분부터 10시 10분까지 전원이 켜져 있었기에 그가 그날 밤 그곳에 없었다는 것을 대변해준다고 주장한다. 따라서 CCTV 영상에서 발견되는 흑인의 약 180cm 키의 용의자는 미카엘이 아닌 그 지역 미카엘과 생김새와 키가 비슷한 성폭력 전과와 여성 자전거를 훔친 전과가 있었던 마쿠엘 분이라고 주장한다. 그리고 무엇보다 이렇게 깡마르고 왜소해 보이는 미카엘이 약 55kg이나 나갔던 하루카의 사체를 들쳐매고 개울가의 긴 길목을 걸어 홀로 유기할 수 있는 신체적, 물리적 힘이 상식적으로 있을 수 없다 주장한다. 반면에 카운티 검사 길레르모는 미카엘이 잠시 거주했던 텍사스 대학 창고에서 발견된 그가 체포된 후에 경찰에 의해 채집된 여러 물품들에 주목하는데 그의 거주 장소에서 발견된 오렌지 두건과 그가 평소에 착용했던 것으로 추정되는 안경들 모두 사건 현장이나 CCTV에서 발견되었고 이 증거들을 착용하고 자신의 셀카 사진을 찍은 것도 확인했다며 그의 유죄를 확신한다. 그리고 그의 DNA가 그녀의 몸에서 발견되지 않은 점도 그가 관계할 때 콘돔을 썼을 가능성이 있다며 그의 숙소에서 발견된 콘돔 껍질이 하루카 사체 근처에서도 똑같이 발견된 점을 주장한다. 무엇보다 범행할 때 사용되어진 듯한 사체 옆에서 발견된 망치 역시 그의 숙소에서 발견된 두 개의 망치들과 모양과 형태가 똑같다며 이것은 우연의 일치가 될 수 없다며 주장한다. 이 밖에도 검사 길레르모는 변호인이 주장하는 노트북 역시 그가 살해할 당시 자신의 가방에 넣고 있었을 수 있다며 노트북이 접혀있을 때에도 전원은 계속해서 유지될 수 있다 주장한다. 무엇보다 검사는 미카엘이 어릴 적부터 자신의 정신상태에 숨어 매우 교활하고 나르시시스트적인 행동 패턴을 계속해서 보였으며 여성에 대한 성관념이 정상적이지 않았다고 주장하는데, 그 주장에 대한 근거를 그가 한때 첫 여자친구를 만나며 강제로 성관계했을 때를 상상해서 소설을 쓴 적이 있는데, 그 소설의 마지막 구절을 읽어버린다.
Was being brutalized, and his story says, "Stop, stop," or words to that effect. The more she shouted, "Make me want to fuck her even." Okay? He wrote that at either the age of 12 or a lot more recent to that. But again, that's a snapshot of what's going on in his head. This is a sexual sadist. This is a person who equates sex and violence, and it doesn't bother him. He's used to it. He's been living in his head for years.
2018년 7월 20일 텍사스 주립 재판장 하루카 와이저 살인사건의 마지막 판결날. 그럼 7명의 여성과 5명의 남성으로 구성된 총 12명의 배심원단들의 그날의 결정은 어떻게 되었을까?
Speaking through your foreperson, have you reached a verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Mr. Rogers, if you'd hand the verdict to Mr. Rubio, please. Mr. Kreiner, if you'd rise to receive the verdict to the jury. We, the jury, find Mikhail Khalil Kreiner guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment, signed by Kenneth Rogers, foreperson of the grand jury. Thank you, sir. Please be seated. Does either party desire to poll the jury?
Yes, sir.
Susanna Lozano, is this your verdict?
Yes, sir.
That was a yes?
Yes, sir.
Lee Wilson, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Brianne Weber, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Scott McMillan, is this your verdict?
미카엘 크라이너는 결국 12명 모두의 만장일치는 아니었지만 압도적인 판결로 하루카 와이저를 살해한 1급 살해죄에 대한 유죄가 확정된다. 재판관은 그에게 약 40년의 복역 후에나 가석방을 받을 수 있는 40년짜리 무기징역을 선고한다. 하지만 미카엘과 그의 변호인은 이 결론에 불복해 바로 항소하게 된다. 그리고 2020년 3월 사건 후 약 4년 만에 비로소 대법원은 미카엘에 대한 판결이 문제없음을 확인하고 기존의 40년짜리 무기징역에 대한 형량을 확정시켜 사건을 종결한다.
What can a father say to the one who killed his daughter? What could possibly make a difference to you? So I'll start with something simple. You killed my daughter. You brutally raped her, and then you mercilessly killed her. And I can see that the truth of that means nothing to you. You almost got away with it. In fact, it was almost too easy. So easy that you're probably itching to do it again. And maybe that's why every time you got kicked out of some place, you make sure to grab your nylon toe straps and your ropes. But you were always so polite. Nobody would notice something like that, just an old rope. Or maybe your other favorite, that blue cable. Now, I thought the prosecution did a great job. But with all due respect, they got one thing wrong. In their closing argument, they said that Haruka did not prevail. But that's not entirely true, is it? I think you messed with the wrong girl that night. I really do. Haruka was so strong-willed and determined, and she loved her friends, and she would never want to see them hurt. So she would not let this go. She would not go without a fight. She has been telling her story in every possible way, with all the clues her body could hold, down to a single strand of her hair. But that's not all. Do you believe in coincidence? Because I don't. Was it a coincidence that a neighbor living behind medical arts happened to see smoke that morning, happened to call 911? Was it a coincidence that those kind firemen happened to respond, help you move your things, hold your bike for you with your name on it? Was it a coincidence that those same two firemen saw you on TV 2 days later? Because I don't. Talk about beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think so. From the ring on her finger that helped us identify her body without having to see the damage inflicted, to the receipt in the pocket of her sweater with her name on it, and all of the other stuff that you stole from her, these cried out, hey, this is the guy right here. And the good, kind people of Austin were listening. So in the end, she did prevail. Because her spirit, her bright faith, is looking down on this scene right now and smiling with the satisfaction that not only were you caught and convicted for the terrible crimes you committed against her, but more importantly, you will never, ever do these things again. Haruka did not choose to sacrifice herself. You made that choice for her. But she didn't die in vain. We will never know how many lives she saved through the events of her death, but judging by the arsenal of ropes and straps and cords and the plethora of bloods that you had gathered, she was the first victim in what you hoped would be a long run of unsolved murders. So the way I look at it, she won. I wish she was still here where I could see her. But I do find comfort in knowing that she's helped stop a serial killer in his tracks. And I promise you this, the Texas State Board of Paroles and Pardons will need to build a new room to hold all the letters that I and everyone who loves Haruka will be writing to make sure that your twisted fantasies remain just that, fantasies. God have mercy on your soul and lead you to repent one day for your crimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Right. You were managed in custody this year.
이 사건의 원인은 어디서부터였을까? 미카엘 엄마가 그를 갖고 난 이후부터였을까? 아니면 그녀가 알코올과 마약에 중독된 이후부터였을까? 아니면 그저 미카엘의 선천적으로 타고난 성향이 이 사건의 동기가 되어버린 것인가? 또 아니면 우리가 완전히 무고한 어떤 한 사람을 마음대로 재단하고 있는 것일까? 하지만 이 모든 원인들을 이제서야 알아낸다 하여도 이제 그 모두가 좋아했던 소우주는 돌아올 수 없다. 완전히 파괴된 소우주는 이제 그녀를 사랑하는 사람들의 기억 속에 멈춰 있다. 다음 사건 파일이 궁금하시다면 구독, 좋아요, 알림 설정 부탁드리겠습니다.